This is Chuck Huber, the voice of Android 17. You're listening to Anime Seekers. You better be, or I'm coming for you. Dragon of the Darkness, Flame!
Toku Secrets is a podcast run by the Anime Secrets website. Check us out at animesecrets.org for more anime, video game, tokusatsu content. Remember to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts today.
Hey everybody, it's Jason from Power Rangers Time Force, and you're watching Toku Secrets Podcast.
Welcome to Toku Secrets. Join us as we journey into the marvelous world of Super Sentai, Kamen Rider, Power Rangers, and many other tokusatsu. Get ready for the adventure of a lifetime. It's Morphin time! Link to the Morphin Force.
I'm Rizwan Merchant. Gokai Red. And we're Toku... What the heck was that? Oh god. What the hell? Wait, Miguel, why are you here? This isn't Anime Declassified.
We ran out of coffee in the other departments. I'm just here to pick some more up.
Okay, but where the heck are Nathan, Anthony, Patrick? We have a podcast to do tonight. What's going on here? Wait, who the heck are you?
I'm Nathan, but not the Nathan you are looking for.
Wait, you're Nathan Marchand from Henshin Men, Power Trip, Monster Film Vault.
Monster Island Film Vault, sir.
Monster Island Film Vault, you're right.
Monster Island Film Vault.
You are
got to
right.
get that branding just right. You know?
Well, I guess we're not doing a Super Sentai podcast tonight, so let's do Godzilla Minus One instead.
Why not? It's tokusatsu.
I got nothing else to do. I'm game.
I was going to say, technically, without Godzilla, we wouldn't have Super Sentai. Fight me, people.
I mean, you're very correct. Godzilla is the reason we have this podcast.
I was going to say, I get a little annoyed, and this might be a hot take for some people, but I get a little bit annoyed with how narrow a definition some people seem to have of tokusatsu.
Yeah,
it's not just what all the spandex people that Toei makes. Okay,
do you have any idea?
It also includes Ultraman and Godzilla and Kaiju and disaster movies. Here's a little bit of education for you. Tokusatsu just means special filmmaking in Japanese. If it has special effects in it, it counts.
I've been trying to convince this guy to watch this movie for like at least 3 podcasts we did together. I'm like, you're the Toku guy. Go watch Godzilla already.
I was planning on it, but I could never make it out there with logistics of personal stuff.
Likely excuse.
But I did make it twice now. I made it to the colored edition, and then I just got back an hour ago from seeing the minus color.
Yes.
So I have done my due homework now, Miguel.
Finally.
Now, I haven't seen it 4 times like somebody else that we're talking to, but...
Well, yeah, but I know people who've seen it more than I have. One person, I think, is trying to single-handedly fund the sequel.
I mean, I would love a sequel. This movie was fantastic.
Yeah, either he's trying to fund the sequel or convince the director to let him work on it or something, and I've been joking. It's like, yeah, he'll bring him on, but all he's going to do is bring the director coffee every day.
Hey, I'd be down to do that job too.
I mean, I wouldn't complain too much.
Exactly.
But...
Especially after this great film he dropped, because man, oh man, this movie was something special.
It really was.
I said on my 3-hour MIFV episode that, and I admitted I could be still in the honeymoon phase, but I'm thinking possibly Mount Rushmore of kaiju films worthy.
I would agree. I mean, at the absolute worst, I'd say this is probably the second best Godzilla movie ever made.
Next to...
I would say, for me, the original will still go up there just because of...
Well, yeah.
But I know people can interchange that with Shin, if they like.
Yeah, although Shin has some very outspoken critics. I'm not one of them, but it has some very outspoken critics.
I think Shin is fine. I won't argue against anyone if they put it in their top 3, top 5. It's not in my personal one, but I could see where they're coming from. But to me, this
Mhm.
one is like easily like top 2 at worst.
Yeah. Yeah. And in case anyone's wondering, my personal Mount Rushmore of kaiju films is Kong 33,
Mhm.
Godzilla 54, and Gamera 3. And then this.
Very good choices. I was like,
Because
I was gonna say, well, one of them's definitely got to be OG King Kong. Just
because without Kong 33, we would have none of this. It's possibly the most influential, and I would even argue important film ever made, because
it is up
its
there.
impact not only on cinema but on culture and everything is just
agreed.
It's almost unfathomable.
Agreed.
To be
The
honest,
visual effects that they did in 1933 were just spectacular, even nearly 100 years later. So Kong definitely deserves that one. 54. Gamera 3. Won't argue that. Those Gamera movies are wild sometimes.
They are. I mean, that whole trilogy is great, and I am one of those people who loves Gamera the Brave. Gamera the Brave is perilously close to getting on that list, because I mean, I love Gamera the Brave so much. It's one of only 2 kaiju films I can point to that nearly make me cry.
Well,
I'm not afraid.
I guess we gotta
Okay,
check it out.
I will. Okay, make that 3, because -1 does get to me at points.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god, that kid.
Oh, the little girl.
Akiko.
Oh, she's Akiko. Yes, yeah, she's tremendous. I did mention her name. I wish I could remember that little actress's name, because she's brilliant, and I don't know how they found a 2-year-old who could not only act but take direction.
Her name is Sai Nagatani. I might be pronouncing
There
that
you go.
correctly.
There you go. Fun fact, I learned after I've done all these podcasts, that apparently Takashi Yamazaki, the writer-director on this, initially was going to have the child in this film, because I don't want to give too much away until we talk about it.
Yeah.
It was initially going to be a boy, but after he saw her, he's like, nope, it's a girl now.
I mean, hey, that kid could act.
He made the right choice, man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
when a 2-year-old upstages basically every Kenny and every Gamera, well, all the old Gamera movies, that's
oh yeah, absolutely.
yeah, so this is my first real monster movie I've seen in a long time. I think the last one I consciously finished from start to finish was the American Godzilla, late 90s or early 2000s. I forget when it came out.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Why?
I'm sorry.
Why would you
I'm
do
sorry.
that to
Now
yourself?
the cartoon sequel is infinitely superior.
Yes.
But oh man.
Yeah.
That's a podcast for another time.
I would still argue worst Godzilla movie ever, but it barely qualifies for being called Godzilla. Honestly, if it had been called anything but Godzilla, no one would care. It would have faded into 90s obscurity and been done. And to be honest, it should have been called Based on 20,000 Fathoms, because that's far more in common with that movie.
Yes, sir.
And prior to that, I've seen bits and pieces of the older movies on TV. I have vivid memories of seeing Mechagodzilla on TV, Mothra.
Which Mechagodzilla? There are 2 of them if we're talking about the Showa movies.
I don't know. I think it was Silver.
Was there a red dinosaur with him?
Yeah.
Then it was Terror of Mechagodzilla, which was my first Godzilla movie and one of the best.
Okay. Yeah, so I watched that before I could really understand movie plots. Like, so I was pretty darn young at the time. That was probably 32 years ago at this point.
Oh, for a second, I thought you were going to say you were 30 or 32 years old. I'm like, wait, what?
You look good for a 60-year-old.
No, I'm 36.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to ask your age or anything, but I'm like, wait, you were 32 years old? You were a child at 30? What?
No, I watched it.
Space is warped and time is bendable.
We're not in the Doctor Who universe right now. We're in the Monster universe.
Well, no, that was a Riftrex reference, actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, you're thinking wibbly wobbly timey wimey.
There we go.
That's Doctor Who.
Yeah. So, Nathan, I think I'll give you the honors as the resident Kaiju Academic if you want to run us through some of that plot that we had in this movie.
Oh, geez. Okay. You're making me. You're making me do this.
I mean, you are the academic.
no, I got it. It's fresh enough. We start in late 1945, right at the end of World War II, and we have Shikishima, a young kamikaze pilot who lands his plane on an airstrip on Odo Island, which has great significance for us for us Godzilla fans, I should say. And he says, "Oh, my plane's faulty. You gotta fix it." Well, the head mechanic goes to him and says, "By the way, your plane is fine. I know why you didn't. I know why you told us that." Basically telling him, it's like, "I know, the war's almost over. We're basically losing. You don't want to kill yourself. I get it. Your secret's safe with me," basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then later that night, their camp is attacked by a giant dinosaurian lizard, who one of the guys says, "Oh, the locals call him Godzilla." And then this thing proceeds to go full tilt Jurassic Park on everybody. And everybody there is a mechanic, so they don't really know how to fight all that well. So they tell Shikishima, "Get in your plane and shoot it with your guns." Why? Because 20 millimeter guns will kill anything. So he sneaks over there, manages and gets his hands on the guns, freezes up. The mechanics panic and shoot at this Godzilla with their rifles, and then he goes over and he starts massacring all of them. When it's all said and done, there are only two survivors, Shikishima and the mechanic, which is Tachibana is his name. I remember his name because it's also the name of a Kamen Rider mentor. Just to give my Toku cred right there. And then you fast forward a few months, December 1945. Shikishima goes back to Tokyo, finds that it's all been decimated. The war is over by this point. His home is gone. He meets a neighbor lady who hates his guts for not doing his job as a kamikaze pilot, and now her whole family is dead, including her 4 children, and blames him for losing the war. And then he starts wandering around, and he meets a young woman who then just throws a baby into his arms. He's like, "Okay." And then he holds onto the baby. And then after everything gets settled, because she was being chased by somebody, she comes over, gets the baby back. And then they end up basically trying to survive together in a house. He finds out that it's not her kid. It's a child that she was given to by a couple who were dying during the fire bombings. And she has no idea what she's doing, trying to take care of this child. He's like, "Okay." And, then they get some help from said neighbor lady, who's like, "Here, take my rice rations and feed the child, because obviously you don't know what you're doing." Mm-hmm. And then we get a nice little montage where things over the next couple of months, actually more like the next 2 years, where they're slowly rebuilding their lives, and they just keep living together to support one another. And they kind of become this weird found family. There's some implication that the two of them like each other, but nothing's really going anywhere. And then Shikishima finally gets a new job. He gets to be a minesweeper, and no, not the one on Windows 3.1. He gets this new job. She doesn't like it because he says, well, it entails, I should say, a certain amount of risk, which is why it pays as well as it does.
Mm-hmm.
So he meets these 3 wonderful characters, Doc, the captain, as they call him, and the kid.
Mm-hmm.
The two older gentlemen, other than Kid, are also war veterans. And he's like, "This is our specialty boat for finding mines. It's made of wood." "Oh, that can't be great." "Oh, why? Oh, it's made of wood because there are magnetic mines out there, and they like metal boats." And it's like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." So they go out to go find mines. Well, their specialty is they find the ones that are moored in the water. So they bring those to the surface, and then they have a big 13 millimeter gun on there, and he shoots at it to detonate the mine. Well, Cap can't shoot the broadside of a barn, but then Shikishima goes over and he's like, bam, he gets it in a couple of, really fast. And he's like, "Oh, well, I guess we know what you're doing while you're around here." And then a little more time passes, and he starts befriending these guys, bonding with them. In the meantime, Operation Crossroads, a nuclear test happens, and all we see is that dinosaurian lizard Godzilla's eye as it gets hit by the shockwave, and then we move on. And so, fast forward a little bit more, and there are reports about the boats being attacked. We see an American destroyer has been hit by something, we don't know what, and at this point, Shikishima and his buddies run into Godzilla.
Mm-hmm.
And he freaks out a little bit because he starts almost like, oh, I think I know what this is. You're going to think I'm crazy, but I think I know what this is. And then they get chased by Godzilla in a very Jaws-like sequence. And then, after trying to figure out what are we going to do, because he's chasing him down, this is a Godzilla who, if he wants you dead, he'll
make it happen.
Yeah, he'll make it happen. You be dead. So they start to use the mine. So they get the mines to go at him, detonate the mine. Doesn't stop him. He keeps coming. So then Shikishima gets the idea, see if we can get it in his mouth. So he gets it in his mouth. They try to detonate again. Doesn't work. He shoots it with the gun. So he didn't freeze up this time. He shot at it, and it explodes a good chunk of Godzilla's face off. But then, in true Wolverine fashion, it all grows back, and then he comes after him again. And then there was a Japanese battleship that they were surveying for them. He comes out, a boat comes out, shoots at him, makes Godzilla angry. He goes over, trashes that. But then they manage to shoot him off, and he falls into the water and sinks. And it's like, aha, we got him. No, you didn't.
Nope.
Then this big blue laser beam comes out. It comes out of the water and blows it up good. And then after that, people are like, well, okay, what the heck is going on? We got to figure out what to do. And then then there was all this interpersonal drama that's going on. You find out that Noriko, the girl, Akiko is the child, who's 2 years old at this point. She's decided, okay, I have to take care of myself now because Shikishima's not doing anything, even though I would like him to. So she gets a job, and he's like, well, what, is my money not enough for you? And all, I'm trying to take care of you, but she wants to. And the other guys tell him, it's like, she wants you to marry her, dude.
Yep.
Get with the program. All right? Get with the program, man. As all dudes do, when one of the bros gets into that situation. So she is going to work, and Shikishima's watching Akiko, and he hears on the radio, oh, Godzilla came ashore, and he's attacking Ginza, which is, in case nobody knew, is actually a district of Tokyo. And he's like, oh no, Noriko's there. So he goes over. So there's this big attack. She's on a train, and because Godzilla hates trains, he goes after it. She nearly dies. She barely gets away. Shikishima finds her while there's crowds running around, and he's just tearing up everything. And then Godzilla unleashes the nuclear breath in its full glory. And then as we see basically a nuke go off and the shockwave is coming, Noriko shoves Shikishima down an alley and she gets hit by the shockwave. Spoiler warning! And for all we know, that is the end of Noriko. Stay tuned. So after that, Shikishima's like, I have to kill this lizard because of what happened to her. So he gets involved with a civilian-run operation because both the U.S. occupation forces and the Japanese government are not going to do a dang thing. The Americans are not doing anything because they're afraid that that's going to antagonize the Soviets because, hello, Cold War. And a start of it anyway. And, the Japanese government, we don't know what we're doing. So all of these former military guys, all these former soldiers get together and it's like, here's our crazy idea. We're going to use Freon gas to sink Godzilla and kill him with the water compression. If that doesn't work, we got a plan B. What's the plan B? We're going to put a giant inflatable tube on him. And then like a little kid in a pool, we're going to inflate the floaties and then bring him up. And then we're going to think that the incredibly fast decompression, that will kill him. Because I've seen, what is it? You only live twice. I know what decompression can do to people. And So Shikishima's like, I want to get involved with that. But he's like, but hey, I got another idea in case that doesn't work. We can fly a plane with explosives into his mouth because I know that he's vulnerable from the inside. I was like, okay, we got a plane. We got this very special plane called the Shingen that can do that, but it needs some repairs. And he's like, oh, I know a guy who could do that. And then it was like, we need this guy, and it's Tachibana.
Mm-hmm.
And so he writes letters to Tachibana because he doesn't exactly know where he lives, telling him that everything that happened on Oto Island was his fault. And then the guy shows up to defend his honor, punches him in the face, ties him up, and is like, how dare you say that? He's like, wait, I just did that to piss you off, to get you here. I need your help. Convinces him to do it, works on the plane. And then there's this one last scene where we see him giving some last second instruction about how to use the plane. And we also find out that Shikishima has made arrangements with the neighbor lady to take care of Akiko. And he leaves a note and a bunch of money. He says, use it for her. And then we get to the big crazy finale where they enact all the plans and none of it works. All the decompression stuff doesn't work, even when we get this Lord of the Rings style last second reinforcements with Kid, because the older guys are like, you don't want to do this. Be glad you didn't fight in the war, even though you wish you were in the war. And he shows up with tugboats to help him out, trying to pull Godzilla up. And then I should also mention that Shikishima used the plane to lure Godzilla out there where they could do this operation.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's flying the plane at Godzilla's gaping mouth. And then they're all like, oh no, he's actually going to do it. So you think he's going to do that kamikaze run he never did before, that he failed to do. And then in one of the most agonizingly dramatic moments of any movie I've seen in a long time, the plane crashes into Godzilla's mouth, explodes, and in true Mortal Kombat fashion, it just takes his whole head off.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see a parachute.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that the last minute instruction that Tachibana was giving him was, he was telling him, I put an ejection seat in it. Live. So he does that. Godzilla crumbles, sinks into the ocean. Then we go back to everybody being welcomed back in the harbor. And then the neighbor lady with Akiko in her arms comes over, and she had gotten a telegram while this was all going on, gives him the telegram, smacks him in the shoulder, just like she did when she told him, it's your fault, Mike. We lost the war and my family is dead. And he just looks like, I have to go. And then you cut to the next scene, and he's got Akiko in his arms. He's running up the stairs, goes into a hospital room, and there's Noriko.
Mm-hmm.
She had survived. And then she asks him the question that has been plaguing him this entire time, with all this PTSD, all this guilt and shame about not doing his duty and getting all those mechanics and everybody killed at the beginning of the movie. She says, is your war finally over? And then he breaks down, he cries, and buries himself in his arms. And then we cut to a scene straight out of a Friday the 13th movie where Godzilla is apparently regenerating despite everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then the movie ends.
Great recap, man.
That was a good recap.
You're welcome.
And I gotta say, this story was... So when I was first talking to Miguel about seeing this movie, I didn't really know what I was going to expect or what I was going to get. I figured, okay, we have some humans that are going to have to deal with Godzilla. But what I didn't expect, Nathan, was the depth of story we had here. All of the interpersonal relationship stuff, all of the really hitting home on post-traumatic stress, survivor's guilt, just dealing with so many things that, these are important topics when you're in war and dealing with a wartime situation. But I didn't expect so many emotions out of a Godzilla movie.
And I'm just looking at this and I'm thinking, where have you people been?
So that leads me to my first question. Is this the normal for Godzilla movies?
This level of depth and emotional potency, not always. I can point to several that aim for something like this. A lot of times, what you're getting with the Godzilla films is they're meant to be entertaining blockbusters.
Mm-hmm.
With some smart writing in there, obviously, even the ones that are fun, especially in the show era, are touching on something interesting.
Mhm.
And the Millennium series from the early 2000s does this as well. But generally speaking, they were made as as nice holiday blockbusters around December. Usually, is what a lot of them were released and all of that. So, not always. So it's not quite an outlier, but it's also a little atypical at the same time.
Yeah, it's
Obviously the original film goes for that kind of emotional potency.
Mhm.
I would say Terror of Mechagodzilla aims for that kind of emotional potency. One that a lot of people would have pushed back on me about until maybe about 5 to 10 years ago, when people suddenly were like, well, maybe it's not so bad, was All Monsters Attack or Godzilla's Revenge,
Mhm.
which people were very unkind to that movie, and I understand why they were. But that one was a very personal film for Ishiro Honda, the director who directed 8 Godzilla movies, including the original, because it was touching on a lot of very common, everyday, very dramatic sort of stuff. It's people just like, oh, it's some dumb kid who fantasizes about going to Monster Island. Yeah, but he does it to escape his very unhappy home life because he lives in a hyper-industrialized area that's being polluted, and his parents are both working to make ends meet. So he's a latchkey kid.
Mhm.
So this is his way of coping with all of that.
Yeah, adding on with what Nathan said, it's they're not always to the depth and to what's the right word? They don't always hit it like this one did. A lot of them do try. They're just off the mark a little bit. Even like in the American side with 2014, they tried to do a little bit more serious storytelling with Bryan Cranston's character, but this one was just able to wrap everything up and do something that's rarely done, which is one, make you afraid of Godzilla when he popped up, because
This is probably the scariest I've seen Godzilla in a long time.
like you
Especially when you have quote unquote proto Godzilla.
yeah when he
at the beginning of the movie.
yeah when he pops in, like, the first scene, like, a little bit terrifying, but as he's coming back and you know what he's capable of, you're dreading it. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't want to see him stomping around Tokyo. Oh, he's finally here. Like, you knew that he was going to make his way to land eventually. You're
Yeah.
just hoping that the characters you've gotten to know just like were away from there, which added to that amazing Ginza scene.
Oh my
And
god.
so they've done it in the past where you do care about some characters. It's
Mhm.
just not, they haven't executed it as well as this one did.
Yeah. No, and I mean it really shows because there is so much emotion in here. Um, in my mind, I keep going back to a couple of scenes in the movie that I thought were extremely heart wrenching. The first big one for me was when Noriko is trying to get him to come out and tell her why, what is your baggage, what did you deal with, and him trying to hide it. Like, you can tell he doesn't want to tell her anything. But I think over time with them living together, she finally wore him down, either breaking down the trust barriers or he hit a breaking point where he couldn't keep it in anymore. Either way, you could feel the emotion in his heart that he had been through hell and back, quite literally.
Yeah, one little detail that I unfortunately omitted was Tachibana gave Shikishima this, it looked like a little book full of stuff, and we don't really see what it is until later, and it turns out that it's a collection of photographs of candid family photographs from all the men who died on Odo Island, and it was his way of saying, like, this is your fault.
You carry this
You
burden.
deprive them of fathers and sons and brothers and everything else.
Yeah. No, and
he kept it with him as, you know, as like this visual, as like this physical symbol of his burden.
Yeah.
You know, the one thing it's like this big thing he can't get over. And so, because basically his failure as a kamikaze pilot was epitomized by that moment when he failed to act.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was definitely a lot. Like his entire arc throughout the movie when he's thinking about being a failed kamikaze pilot. I mean, that is such a struggle. And I mean, I understand from your podcast, Nathan, that I listened to from the other shows, that Japanese back then considered kamikaze pilots in a different way that we would today in our society. It wasn't as stigmatized as it is in that culture.
Not at the time. It was definitely a tactic that was done in desperation.
Yeah,
for sure. And they would just roll them out fast. They were not untrained, but they were undertrained pilots. Most of them were not very good. And, you know, they were basically just told, like, here are the basics.
Yeah.
Take off, fly at an angle, crash. That's all we need you to do. And they basically, I don't want to say brainwashed, but they basically gaslit them into thinking that what you're doing is for the greater good. And it ended up not being they were not successful hardly at all. I mean, they did sink a few ships, they damaged a few others, but they were it was a grossly ineffective tactic. It did cause some demoralization, but it was more just shock because the Allies were just like, what are they even doing? Because it was the idea of suicide attacks was such a foreign concept to them. And it wasn't just kamikaze pilots. There were suicide soldiers who would fight the Americans during their island campaign. They would just jump out from cover, no guns, yell "Banzai" at the Americans and just run at them, and the Americans would panic and shoot them.
So what does that achieve by them running out and doing that? Did they have like a bomb strapped to them or something?
No, that it was just, you know, just a way to freak them out, and I'm guessing maybe deplete some resources. I'm not sure. The kamikaze pilots make more sense. It sort of from a strategic standpoint, but that's what makes Shikishima interesting in this, because we clearly see that he's actually really good at his job.
He's a good sharpshooter.
He's a sharpshooter. He's excellent. He's an excellent pilot. So, you know, that I don't know if that's some creative license or whatever right there, because apparently historically kamikaze pilots were not that great, you know, because they were undertrained. But, you know, the fact that when I describe this character to people and I say he's a failed kamikaze pilot, it's almost oxymoronic if you stop and think about it. You are a failed kamikaze pilot, so you didn't crash into a boat and kill yourself. You know?
And I mean,
you know, but the one of the themes of the movie is the sanctity of life, and they bring this up in the movie. It's just like, you know, after the war, everyone hated the war. Like all these soldiers, like, I hated going to war. I hated being there, and it's because they don't come out and say it, but the implication is that they didn't like why they were fighting. They were being told, go and die for the empire. And they don't, after a while, they just don't believe in the empire anymore. And I've heard some podcasts who completely miss this point.
Yeah.
Because they talk about the scene, you know, when they're prepping. All these guys are prepping for the big final operation. And they're happy about what they're doing. And the other characters are pointing out, like, they're happy because they know what they're doing is really going to make a difference. And there are these other podcasts who are taking that as some sort of it's like soft nationalism.
Oh, dude.
And, you know, being potentially problematic and things like that. And I was like, that's not what this is. If it's anything, it's patriotism. I have to make arguments like this all the time with Shin Godzilla as well. If it's anything, it's patriotism, but they're bringing it up as a contrast. Just like they weren't happy in the war, they're happy with this because it means something.
Yeah, I had to roll my eyes at someone who like called it like pro-fascist, and I'm like, what? Did
Well,
you
no,
watch them?
they said soft nationalism. I don't want to misquote them. They said in the podcast soft
It
nationalism.
wasn't a
not
podcast. It
pro-fascism.
was like a random person on Twitter who had like an okay following.
Oh, okay. You're talking about somebody else.
Yeah, not a podcast, but somebody else. And I just had to roll my eyes. I'm like, bro, did you not see them constantly crap on their government in the lead up before they went out there?
I was gonna say this is not a pro-government movie.
No.
If you could make the argument, it's actually pretty libertarian.
Yeah, I was just like, did you even watch the movie? Were you too busy on your phone? Like, what the heck did you watch?
Yeah, really?
Because
I mean,
like I said, I have had to deal with stuff like this all the time. You know, especially with Shin Godzilla, but I've seen it with other things. That like people just they see what they want to see.
Yeah.
You know, again, you know, I'm kind of jokingly calling myself the Kaiju Academic. You know, without sounding like I'm bragging too much, I do hold a master's degree in English, so I think I know what I'm talking about. But I can tell you in academia, there's stuff like this that gets said all the time, and you know, I'm like, you guys are not seeing what's there. You know, you can't use extra textual evidence to try to prove your point. You have to go by what is in the text itself, because unlike postmodern literary criticism, I do not believe in death of the author. I hear what the creators intended and then look at what is actually in the text of the work.
Yep.
And you know, I take those into consideration, and then I draw conclusions from that.
Yeah.
But a lot of these modern critics, they go in with preconceived notions, and they make those square pegs fit in those circle holes.
Yeah,
it's so
and they usually break the pegs with the hammers trying to do it.
It's so frustrating to see that happen. I've seen it in academia too. When I was in grad school, I wasn't in English like you, but
what'd you study?
Computer science. I have a master's in computer science.
NASA boy over there.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's my producer on the film vault.
No, I do work for NASA.
Dang. Dang. Someone is swimming in money over here.
Yeah.
You might have been friends with my producer. I don't know.
I mean, I might know Jimmy from NASA.
Jimmy from NASA. We all know Jimmy from NASA. We all love Jimmy from NASA.
I actually do have a coworker named Jimmy.
That's getting weird. That's getting a little too weird for me now, sir. And if his last name is Crane, I may have to quit the podcast.
Nope.
Okay. But now you can tell him. It's like, oh yeah, you're Jimmy from NASA. Anyway, but you are talking about, you saw stuff like this.
Oh
when
yeah.
You were in grad
I mean, we'd see stuff like this where people would take what they want to see out of the research, out of the, the text. And in my case, it's more about the academic papers, which are more technical in nature than what you dealt with. But even then, you would see,
because I was in the humanities. It's rampant in the humanities.
Well, it's not really that less, in my opinion, in the STEM and the engineering, because they will force a project to fit this mold to prove a theory. But when you really look at the theory, it doesn't do what you think it does in the grand scheme.
Right. And the other thing that I think a lot of Western academics and critics fail to realize is you have to look through this from a Japanese lens. It's not the same thing. And that is a problem that I see a lot. And there are podcasts that do this, and there are randos on social media that do this. They filter all of this stuff through a very Western political lens, and like, you can't make one-to-one comparisons here. No. It's not the same thing.
Exactly.
And see, I
what you would call quote unquote conservative in Japan is not the same as what a conservative is in America.
And see, I really appreciate that I was able to listen to your podcast between my viewings of Godzilla Minus One. So I went into the movie, no idea what's going on, watched it, fell in love with it, couldn't stop talking about it for a day or two after, listened to your podcast, and then I learned how the Japanese view certain topics, like the kamikaze pilots, just more about the contextualization of the history of World War II for the Japanese. And
Yeah,
that,
because with period pieces, you got to know
Yeah.
at least a little bit of history in order to understand it, and maybe at points be like, "That's not what happened."
and
Right.
that honestly made my second viewing tonight that much more meaningful than it already was, because now I'm seeing the things that you're talking about. Like, I could see why Sumiko was angry with him and blaming
Yes,
him,
Sumiko.
Mm-hmm.
because to me, the first time I watched it, I thought, okay, Sumiko's mad. She's blaming him irrationally because she lost her family and it's just her being a distraught mother. No, she's actually blaming him because they have an honorific thing about it. Honorific, maybe the right word? I don't know, but
Yeah.
they have an honorific thing where if you are a failed suicide bomber, that's a really taboo thing to be, because that shows that you are dishonoring your family, I think.
It showed that
Mhm.
you are
You're
abandoning the mission that you signed up to do.
Yeah,
So-
you're not only dishonoring your family, you're dishonoring your nation.
Mhm.
And even though they don't bring this up, you would also, at that time, you would have been dishonoring the emperor.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now, I could tell you a lot of crazy things happened in relation to Japan and the emperor. That's why you almost never hear the emperor get brought up in anything. I mean, like, I've watched every Godzilla movie multiple times. The emperor is never mentioned. You hear a lot about prime ministers
Mhm.
and other politicians. You never hear the emperor brought
You
up.
That's
see,
interesting.
Ever.
you see emperors of alien nations or underground nations,
Yes.
but never the Japanese emperor.
Yes. Looking at you, Toga Master, and your giant chest hair. I want to leash Megalon. Best part of that movie is frickin' Jet Jaguar. I will fight anyone on that.
Dude, did you catch the Jet Jaguar short while it was still up on YouTube?
Oh, good Lord, Matt. I might have downloaded that thing and made meme videos out of it because I adore it.
Oh, dude, those shorts are great.
I have a weird appreciation for that smiley superhero robot.
Hey, listen, I love Jet Jaguar, so you'll get
I
no
have
pushback from
got-
me on that one.
I was gonna say I have concocted a way to get Jet Jaguar into the frickin' MonsterVerse, and it would work.
I am looking up.
And he
Jet
thankfully wouldn't be powered by plot convenience.
I mean, well, they already showed how you could power anything up in the MonsterVerse. Just copy DNA from Hollow Earth and you're set.
Basically.
Is Jet Jaguar basically like a Henshin hero of some type?
Yeah.
He's not a Henshin hero technically, but he was inspired by Henshin Heroes.
He's more like Ultraman
because
more
Henshin
than
Heroes were
anything.
crazy pop. Yeah, he's close. Well, Ultraman's a Henshin hero,
Mm.
but Jet is technically that he technically does not transform. He inexplicably grows huge because again, powered by plot convenience.
Yeah.
So he's a Kyodai hero, but not Henshin.
Yeah.
Learning the difference here. But back to minus one. We'll
Kyodai is giant. Henshin is transforming.
We'll fawn over Jet Jaguar another time. Back to minus one.
Yeah, back to minus one. I do want to take a second and just appreciate this cast, because these guys really made this movie what it is today. And it might be a little much, but I do want to just call out their names one by one just to get that appreciation. So Shikishima is played by Ryunosuke Kamiki, fantastic actor. Noriko Oishi is played by Minami Hamabe.
Fun fact.
Yes.
Last year was the second movie that you guys could have seen in a theater with her in it.
Oh, really? What was the other one?
She was also in Shin Kamen Rider.
I did see that.
Yep.
I saw it on
She
Amazon.
was trying to remember her name. She has a similar sounding name. She's the girl in that.
I think I remember her. I honestly don't remember too much of the movie now. It's been so long.
Well, she was the main girl in that.
Okay.
I'm just trying to remember.
Ruriko.
Ruriko. That's
Okay.
right. It's a similar sounding name. So she was Ruriko in Shin Kamen Rider. And I don't care what some of my podcasting peers say, she's better in this movie.
She is. I will. 100%
I
agree with you.
honestly didn't care much for Ruriko and Shin Kamen Rider, but
I mean, here's my hot take, and you may not appreciate it, but I didn't like Sim Kamen Rider all that much to begin with.
I wasn't the biggest fan of it either.
It
And that
bugged
that
me.
got me in trouble with some of my peers.
I thought it was
It
good.
gets me in trouble too.
It was okay, but
It
it's far from. I think it's far from the best of the quote unquote Shin trilogy.
True.
Yeah, because to me, the Sin Kamen Rider movie, I think they took a lot of extra liberties with the concept of Kamen Rider, leaning more into the gore and grotesque, which I'm not a big opponent of, but I don't think it meets the mold of what you expect with Kamen Rider.
Right. My biggest problem is that Anno is clearly just fanboying a little too hard, and he's just throwing everything in there. Like, hold on. First off, you don't give me an origin. Things are just happening, and characters are showing up because they have to. And I'm like, you know what? I'm glad I saw the original Kamen Rider, because if I went into this cold, I would have just been like, slow down.
Yeah.
Take your Ritalin and slow down.
Okay, so as somebody who has only seen 2 complete Kamen Rider to date, I 100% agree with you. Because I have seen Kamen Rider Ghost, I regret that, and I've seen Kamen Rider Decade, I also severely regret that. I blame Senkenzer for us watching Kamen Rider Decade on this podcast, and I will never have a nice word for that season.
guys. You gotta do the OG show,
We will.
because that's where it all started.
Yeah.
And you gotta do Black and Black RX, because it's the best.
Yeah. No, I do intend to watch
Well,
this stuff.
Black is. Black RX kind of like falters.
Yeah, I mean,
But
you saw how
anyway, we're not talking about Kamen
I was
Rider.
gonna say, well, you saw how long it took them to finally do a Godzilla movie. So don't expect Kamen Rider for maybe another 5 years.
Yeah. And then, so going back to the listing real quick, Seira Mizushima, also known as the Kid, is played by Yuki Yamada. And interesting fact about him, he plays one of the best, not the best, but one of the best blue Sentai Rangers and Super Sentai, in my opinion.
Oh, really? Which Sentai is he from?
He is from Kazuka Sentai Gokaizer. He plays Zo.
Oh.
Yeah.
I only know Gokaiger because I suffered through Megaforce.
I am sorry that you had to suffer through it, because Gokaizer is probably my favorite Sentai of all time.
I've heard a lot of good stuff about it.
There's a really good case to be made right now about Osama Sentai King Oger, which is still airing, that might overtake Gokaizer, but Gokaizer still holds the rank for me as number 1. But
right.
Yuki Yamada did a fantastic job here. I'm actually very impressed with this guy's ability to go from a very stoic and badass, no nonsense kind of guy in Gokaizer to what we got with the Kid in Godzilla Minus One.
You know what's really wild?
What's that?
His character is supposed to be younger than Shikishima, but the actor is older than the guy playing Shikishima.
I was actually wondering about that a while back.
He apparently has the same problem I have. People think I'm younger than him.
Yeah.
Happens when I shave. I feel that.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna enjoy it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let them think that I'm actually that age. But yeah.
Going on here, we got Sasaka Tachibana, the technician, played by, I apologize in advance, Munetaka Ioke. And we have Noda, who is the weapons engineer, played by Hidetaka Yoshioka. I
love this guy.
He is so amazing.
I love this guy. He's one of my favorite characters in the movie.
Has he ever played
I love this guy. And for what I understand, that guy is an award-winning actor in Japan. And you can tell the guy's got chops. Oh my gosh.
He's so incredible. I could not get over his acting in this. He was so great.
So once I found out who he was, I remembered that he was in one of Akira Kurosawa's final movies, Rhapsody.
Dreams.
Rhapsody in August,
Oh, Rhapsody in
Yep.
August. Okay, the other one. Dreams was his actual last movie. Okay.
And so I'm just like, I thought this guy sounded familiar. And, to Riz's point, this cast was awesome.
I love his look. I love Noda's look
Yeah.
in this, where it's kind of like he's got a little bit of that kind of crazy scientist look, but not to the point where it's caricaturish.
Yeah.
But he looks quirky. Like even when I just saw him in the trailer, I'm like, you look a little quirky.
Yeah, I saw him. I'm like, all right, so that's gonna be like a professor or something.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. He's gonna. I like. You're the science guy. I could tell you're the science guy because he's got like kind of like not quite like full tilt fro, but he's got big. But he's got the big. He's got a little bit of a poofy gray hair thing going there, and it's such a great look. I love it.
You know who it reminds me of? I don't know if you guys have ever seen NBC's Heroes TV show back in the day.
I did. It's been that I'm blowing dust off of those files, but oh bad.
I get Hiro Nakamoto vibes from him, like an older version of that.
Maybe, yeah.
It's not like strong, but I get some vibes of him. I get reminded of him of a good bit. So, but yeah.
And on Riz's point about how he saw the Gokaiger actor go from where he was to this role, going to the person who played Tachibana, he was also Sanosuke in the live action Rurouni Kenshin films.
No kidding.
That's true.
And so seeing him
like
go from basically like the goofball of the movie to like a more serious heavy role was also a bit of a culture shock. I'm like, oh
yeah, but he also had some of the funniest jokes in the movie.
Yes, he did.
I have to say, because my description and the preview and the trailers and everything do make this look like a very dark, broody movie, and it really is. But in the end, it's a celebration of life. But there are some really nice bits of humor in this, and one of my favorite is because he's one of the guys who's outspoken against the government, and he really doesn't like them. And he's like, oh. It's like, when they spot Godzilla attacking a boat, they're like, we're going to go take him out. It's like, I thought you didn't like government orders. He said, I don't, but somebody's got to do it, basically. And then they see Godzilla come up and just take out one of the boats. And he's like, you know what? Maybe not.
Oh, yeah. So there's definitely, like you said, there are definitely some funny moments. And that part got a giant laugh out of my theater.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I do the same thing. See the boat go down and be like, nope.
Yep. All kinds of nope. And what I like about it is that the humor feels very natural as opposed to, and there's actually a fancy literary term for this, the bathos. Look it up sometime, kids. The bathos that you see in a lot of modern films, especially the MCU. They had a massive problem with this. I'm like, guys, unless your name is James Gunn and this is Guardians of the Galaxy, it's not going to work.
Yeah, there's too many. Well, that just happened. Moments in a lot of modern movies, and in this one, the humor felt natural. It didn't feel forced. It didn't feel out of place. It just fell in perfectly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So continue on this list real quick. We have one or two more. Sumika Ota was played by Sakura Ando. She was the neighbor. And then Yoji Akitsu, the captain of the Sensei Maru, was Koransuke Sasuke. And then little baby Akiko is played by Miss Sai Nagatani, and that kid needs an Emmy or Golden Globe,
an Oscar.
Something.
That's what she needs. An Oscar.
Yeah.
Give the child the Best Actress award.
I mean,
please.
I don't understand how you trained. I think she's 2 years old, right?
Yeah, she's actually about 2, maybe 3. I would guess the character is supposed to be 2, and I'm like, how does this child take direction and properly emote and say lines? At least I'm assuming she's saying the lines and they're not just dubbing her over.
No, they can't be dubbing that over. There's no way.
I mean, I'm assuming they're not. So I'm like, this child is either peaking way too early or she is. I'm trying to think of like like a really just great actress like this. She's destined to become this because my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think what would be a nice equivalent actress for this. Not the right ones are not coming to mind, unfortunately.
No,
but she's got a career coming.
Dude.
My gosh.
I could not believe how good she was in her role. And I don't think she's older than
she's endearing. She breaks your heart. I don't. And like I said, I don't know if I think I mentioned to you, I don't know if I said this. Did I say this before we recorded? I don't remember where I said like originally Takashi Yamazaki, the writer-director had intended for Noriko and Shikishima to have a son. And then when he met this little girl, he was like, nope, you're a girl now. It's a girl.
I mean, props to the guy for recognizing talent and putting her to work. I mean, that was a good choice.
I mean, good Lord. I mean, it's hard enough to find good child actors when they're like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, around there. Finding a 2-year-old who can do it. This 2-year-old little girl is making the kid from Godzilla 2014 look positively blasé by comparison. Like, he was like 5. I mean, and I applaud Gareth Edwards for like, the kid's supposed to be 5, so I want a real 5-year-old. Little Akiko has got him beat.
Dude, there's no beating that kid. I mean, just props to her. I hope she has a very fruitful life as an actress as she chooses that career when she's old enough to understand what the heck she did.
Well, and hopefully the Japanese film industry doesn't destroy her like it tends to do other like the American film industry tends to do to child actors.
Yeah, I hope not. But I don't know. I tend to think, just based on culture, that she might fare better in the Japanese industry than she would in the American.
Probably.
Because I might be wrong, but I don't think they have the same level of like, oh my god, here's a pageant. Oh my god, here's this.
I don't know, dude. Idol culture is pretty crazy out there.
Idol culture is nuts, but hopefully she doesn't go that route. But I mean, how exciting would it be if in like, I don't know, 12, 15 years she's joining a Super Sentai team or I don't know, doing something really nuts and becoming the first Ultra Woman to get her own show or something.
Yeah, and see, that's possible because these Sentai actors, some of them, according to Nathan Dessa, my other co-host on Toku Secrets, he's told me they've gone on to do much bigger things than Sentai, and they're very well known now. For example, Yuki Yamada in this movie, according to Nate, he has a very fruitful career following Gokaiser. A couple of people from Sinkins are in the same boat. So, I mean, the talent that comes through these, what they call quote-unquote children TV shows like Sentai, Kamen Rider, they do end up making it big in the end sometimes.
Got to start somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that's really cool. So, what was it like? So, because I wasn't really paying attention to Godzilla Minus One advertisements until it became a big deal in the media. But what was the reception when this idea of the movie came out in the kaiju community, Nate?
It was overwhelmingly positive. We knew there were rumblings that a new movie was coming. I think close to 6-7 months, maybe a little longer, in the lead up to when the first trailer was dropped in summer, early summer. And that's when we got the title drop. The rumored title was Godzilla 0. So people were like, oh, it's going to be a prequel. And then I mean, the funny thing is that Godzilla Minus One is a very Evangelion sounding title.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
And the trailer is pretty good at spelling out what the title means. They don't talk about it in the movie itself, but if you watch the movie, you get basically what the title is supposed to be talking about is that Japan is reduced to nothing after the war, and then Godzilla shows up and makes them less than zero. That's how bad it's basically Godzilla shows up and kicks them while they're down. Actually, he doesn't just kick them while they're down, he stomps on them while they're down, because that's what Godzilla do. And so it makes sense. Technically, they just don't spell it out in the movie itself. And I wonder sometimes if Toho did that just because they're like, we don't want the fan title to be correct.
I mean, it could be.
You know,
right.
Sorry, I keep muting myself when I thought I was when I thought I wasn't.
You're good.
Sorry, because I didn't want the cough to get caught. But anyway, so it was overwhelmingly positive. I had a few misgivings once it was confirmed it was a period piece set during the occupation era, which has never been done before. This is the first Godzilla period piece, like the first full-on period piece. There have been points where you would have segments of a Godzilla film that were period pieces, but not the entire movie. And I'm thinking, okay, if you're going to set it during the occupation period, that is potentially a problem. And then, like I said in the synopsis, they get around it by saying, like, the Americans are like, we're not doing anything because we don't want to antagonize the Soviets.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that makes sense, because although I will admit there was also a part of me that was excited by the prospect of Godzilla fighting General Douglas MacArthur. And it doesn't happen, but that's okay. Typically, when Toho tries to find a handful of white people to be in these movies, they speak English worse than the Japanese people somehow. I don't know how that works. But so it was overwhelmingly positive. It was very exciting in the lead up. We had another trailer. I did a trailer analysis episode for it on my podcast as a little bonus episode that got even more hits after the movie came out. I'm like, why are you listening to me talk about the trailer when you can go watch the movie? About 75% of what I thought was going to happen didn't happen. And I'm totally cool with being wrong. So, it was just funny how why that was going on. It's like, anything -1 for me is basically an instant blockbuster for the podcast. But, like I said, it was very exciting. I haven't seen that level of hype and excitement in the Godzilla fandom. And, well, I should say I haven't seen it happen very often. There was a lot of excitement for GVK, for Godzilla versus Kong. But I think but honestly, for different reasons. And, which I was totally cool with that. So I was just happy that people were mostly happy with the movie in the lead up to it, and then mostly happy with it after the fact. It's the first time that I feel like the Godzilla fandom was largely happy with something that they got. They've been it's been like it feels like a 50-50 split minimum on basically everything that we've been getting for 20 years. Like, Final Wars was kind of the first one. I will never forget getting on the internet and discovering that a lot of people hate Final Wars. And I'm like, why? Why? This is a Valentine drenched in Red Bull just for you.
They couldn't handle Don Fry's mustache, man. What can they say?
Yeah, Don Fry. Yeah. No, most people can't handle Don Fry's mustache because Don Fry's mustache can take out Chuck Norris's beard. Okay.
Dang.
My friend Kaiju Kim and I actually came up with Don Fry facts that were styled after Chuck Norris facts, and and put those out onto YouTube. And
look up Don Fry Godzilla Final Wars when we're done with this podcast, and you'll see why we're talking him up so much.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to go.
Yeah, Don Fry is kind of amazing.
Yes.
I'm just saying. He looks like Mike Haggar from Final Fight. In fact, he played Mike Haggar in a Final Fight fan film.
Yep.
Miguel, drop something in Discord for me later to look at that, please.
Will do. But no, I really recall November as the premiere was coming on in Japan, and just like the reactions from it. Gareth Edwards was invited to it. He directed Godzilla 2014, and his thing was, this was the movie I wanted to make.
Yep. He actually said he was jealous.
He was jealous, and I'm like, oh, okay. Okay, I gotta see what's like when he made a really solid Godzilla film, but when he's saying I am jealous that this guy was allowed to do more than what I was allowed to do, I'm like, all right, I think I know what we're in for. And as more and more of the praise came out, I remember going, well, I hope we get it stateside. They said we're supposed to get it. I hope we get it in my area.
that was I don't think that was ever in question. It wasn't confirmed. Until the second trailer where they said like, oh yeah, it's getting released a month later.
I think it was like how long,
which is the fastest turnaround for any Godzilla film.
It was like how long and how many theaters are actually going to get it. And when they finally released the list of theaters, it was like, this is really small. I think it was like under 1,000.
No, it released with about 1,800, which is kind of, it's not limited, but it's
not wide release either.
It's not. I think it's technically a wide release, just not as wide release as say like a Disney movie,
right?
Because they would have had
Disney movies are close to like 4,000.
Yeah, I heard the number somewhere about how many they were getting. And it wasn't quite, I don't think it was quite 4,000, but it was, I think, at least like closer to 3,000 for sure. And Minus One, it was the little movie it came out. It played at all the major theaters in my city. So I didn't have to drive really far to see it.
We got it in the main theater at mine, and then the next week when it went from like 1,800 to like 2,500, the one I work at got it. And let me tell you, that opening weekend, when I was scrolling through the show times, it was like sold out everywhere.
Yeah, because that was what was crazy, is that it got more theaters as time went on. Because originally it was going to be like, a modest wide release for a week. And then it kept getting extended. And then they added more theaters. And then it kept getting extended. It was like, it went from basically playing for 1 week to 6 weeks, goes away for 1 week, and then Minus Color happens.
Yeah, so it looks like initially there's 1,000 theaters, and then by December 15th, they added 2,600 total for America. And I have to say, I didn't see this movie until probably middle of January, if I had to guess. And even then, guys, like when I was booking my ticket, I figured, okay, it's gonna be like me and 5 people. Like, was it me and the Boy and the Heron? There was not that many people there for Boy and the Heron, but my theater was still packed in mid-January.
Yep.
And this movie came out December 1 in America.
Yeah, this is something, and I haven't brought this up. You're getting some exclusive thoughts here from me on this, because I haven't talked about this with on any of the other podcasts that I've been on to talk about this. But I there's one interesting parallel that I'm drawing between this and GVK, and I'm not 100% sure how to think about it. And that is, I think both of these films found success due to interesting circumstances. So GVK,
I can back
was
you up
largely,
on this one, actually.
Yeah,
I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, GVK was largely successful because it was the first big blockbuster post-COVID for most people. So they're like, most people are like, I've been cooped up forever. I need a big fun movie to go see. Oh, look, Lizard Monkey Punchy Punchy. I'm going. And so they go see that, and it did very well because of that. I do wonder if Minus One saw as much success as it did, because some people will push back on me on this, but 2023 was not a good year for Hollywood, and most audiences are just fed up with Hollywood movies. Like, there were very few Hollywood films that turned a profit and were genuinely successful. You had stuff like Guardians of the Galaxy 3 broke even, for what I understand. Super Mario Brothers was a big hit, genuine hit.
Yeah.
But for the most part, Hollywood was struggling to get anywhere because people were just not happy with Hollywood anymore.
Yes and no.
And then Minus One comes out, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, this is what I've been waiting for forever," and it's it just happens to be from Japan.
Yes, that it did better than what the standard Hollywood blockbuster has been, but you got to remember, for the last 10 years, the standard blockbuster has been the superhero movie.
Yeah.
Those,
I mean, there's a multitude of factors that have led to the disenchantment with it. It's
yeah.
No, this is not the
We're not
the podcast to unpack all that. It would take too
Yeah.
long. But
this year
yeah,
wasn't.
and it might get some of us in the call canceled or something. I don't know, because people get weird about this.
It wasn't the year for them, except for maybe like 2 or 3 of them. But also, I think it was something refreshing for people to go watch.
Right.
And what I've learned this year working at a theater is it's not so much like blockbusters. I think people are just tired of the same ones, because there are other movies that did ridiculously well. Like, who expected a Barbie movie to hit $1 billion? Not just that,
Yeah.
but
Oh yeah, Barbie and Oppenheimer. Yeah, those were
Barbenheimer.
the
That
other
was
ones.
an
Yeah,
insane.
Barbenheimer. I had a friend who told me, he's like, "Did you do the entire Barbenheimer?" It's like, "No, I went to the half I cared about."
Like, both of those.
But it wasn't Barbie.
And by the way, Godzilla Minus One is a good companion piece to Oppenheimer.
It really
good
was.
lord! The whole Oppenheimer is a prequel to Minus One. That was a meme before the movie even came out.
Oh yeah, but no, it's
and then the movie comes out and the meme gets cranked up to about 12, and then it gets cranked up to 11, and it gets cranked up to 12 because then people then the Blu-ray came out, people got footage, and then they started editing them together.
But I will say this: going to Godzilla versus Kong, there was a few other blockbusters that were released, but it was still like we were still in that limited space on how many people could go to a theater. And when people look at the budget and how much Godzilla versus Kong did, a little under 500 million, but I'm like, you do realize that it made under 500 million when most theaters, their capacity was only 25%.
Yep.
So it was the first movie that was bringing people in to the theaters, and honestly, there's a lot of people who became fans of both of these creatures since. And so this one being the first new one, before we get Godzilla Cross Kong later this year, like, there's a fraction of them who went to go see it, and when they saw the quality of it, they're like, oh, so not just Godzilla can't just be only a silly action movie, but it could have these kinds of tones, these kinds of messages as well.
Yeah.
Word got out. And just goes to show you, if you make a movie that can appeal to people, they're going to come watch it, regardless if theaters are struggling or not.
Yeah, which is why I'm going to be very curious to see how the new Empire does. Because because like I said, GVK came out in very interesting circumstances. And obviously those circumstances don't really apply anymore. I'm also wondering if people are going to go into I think the trailers are making it clear that GXK is not going to be the same thing as Minus One. But I do wonder if people may still go into it expecting that, or what I'm not looking forward to, because I know the closer we get to it, this is going to happen because of the factional nature of fandoms anymore, is people are going to start getting into camps, because they're going to be all of these snooty types are going to be like, it's not Minus One, so I won't see it. And then they're going to be the bros, or the Monsterverse bros are going to be like, Minus One is stupid and boring. I need lizard monkey punchy. And I'm just like, all of you, please.
Is that a real
shut
thing?
up.
Yeah, unfortunately.
It's a real thing. I am so sick of it.
It is, unfortunately.
Because you have someone like me who is actually willing to enjoy everything that the Godzilla franchise has to offer.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got my personal favorites and everything, but I am totally okay with the wide range of tones and genres and everything else that the franchise has to offer, and just how versatile a character Godzilla is. Because unfortunately, the big reason for the factions is because Some people prefer their Godzilla one way, and they're unwilling to accept him any other way.
Yeah,
So
it's what I tell people, that Godzilla is a lot like Batman, in which you could go either way in terms of tone on the pendulum with both of these characters. You know, you could have your cheesy Godzilla where he does a drop kick while Jet Jaguar is holding a monster. And you can have your super serious one, just like you can have Adam West Batman existing at the same time as something like a Christian Bale or Robert Pattinson Batman. It works. And
I want to get this visual in my head now. I need to go find a video clip of this.
Of which one? Godzilla drop kicking someone?
What, the flying drop kick?
Just look up the video for that,
friend.
dude.
Oh, my friend, you have not lived until you have seen the drop kick.
Oh, it's great.
Oh my goodness.
It is so great.
It is probably the top 5 one of the top 5 craziest things Godzilla's ever done, along with flying with his atomic breath and doing a body splash that Rob Van Dam would envy.
Interesting.
There's also him falling from space, creating a giant meteor, and getting up like it was nothing.
Yep. Because Final Wars is like that.
So, where would you recommend somebody who just got into Godzilla with the -1 movie? Where would you recommend they go next to get more of its flair for the kaiju genre?
See, that is a little hard of a question to answer because it would entail that I ask them other questions. So if they're coming off of -1 and they say, I want more Godzilla like this, I'll like, okay, Godzilla 54, maybe Godzilla Raids Again, the immediate sequel after that, because it's close enough. And then maybe something like Terror of Mechagodzilla, but that's at the end of the first series of Godzilla films, so I don't know about that. But then, like, I would say, like, Godzilla, Return of Godzilla from the mid-'80s, maybe Godzilla versus Biollante. I would probably recommend Shin Godzilla as well because it's new, but it's similar in tone to -1. Similar, maybe not, but it's vastly different because it's incredibly weird by comparison to -1. -1's positively normal compared to Shin Godzilla. And then if they want to watch something American, I would probably say Godzilla 2014. But like I said, after that, I'm gonna have to be like, okay, what kind of stuff do you like to watch? What kind of movies? I'd have to ask them follow-up questions.
Right.
Because not everybody is just going to be like, I love this, I need everything. Then I'll be like, okay, start with 54, just work your way through.
And honestly, like, if you have HBO Max, they have a good chunk of the Godzilla movies on there.
They have most of them at this point. There's some gaps, but they have most of them. The accessibility for them is remarkably high at this point. And
I think Tubi also has a good chunk of them too.
Tubi has a bunch of them as well. So there's a lot of availability.
Yeah.
But, then I have to also ask them, like, do you like old movies? Do you like new movies? Because like I said, Godzilla is so broad
Right.
that unless you are somebody like me, when I first discovered this, where I'm like, this is so interesting, I need to see everything. And then I just started at the beginning and worked my way through it for the most part.
So from 54 onwards,
as best
watch them
I could.
all?
If someone wants to do that.
Oh, no, I'm asking, did you do that?
As best I could.
Okay.
Yeah. I saw Terror of Mechagodzilla, which was from 1975. I saw half of it. And then I'm like, well, this is interesting. And then I found we're to talk about diametrically opposed. I found a VHS 2-pack that had the American edit of Godzilla 54 called King of the Monsters and Godzilla versus Megalon.
R.I.P. Raymond Burr.
And those were the next two I saw. And wow. Wow.
From what little reading I did beforehand,
Godzilla versus Megalon is the one with the drop kick.
Yes, sir. It's got Jet Jaguar, one of the most amazing ending songs ever. And a
Jet Jaga. Yeah, he mother never really loved him. From the band MSTPK version.
Oh my goodness. The more I hear about Jet Jaguar, I was gonna go watch Jet Jaguar content now, it looks like.
Dude, as soon as we're done recording here, I am gonna screen share some Jet Jaguar
It's
content
great,
for you.
man.
I'm down.
I am going to screen share some Godzilla drop kicking and some
I'm down.
Jet Jaguar action.
But yeah, piggybacking off of Nathan, I would say like, I think like the definite recommends for me, 54, 2014, especially because I know a lot of people are fans of Bryan Cranston. He's probably the highlight of the movie because his acting is spectacular. Yeah, I would say like kind of those two just as a more or less just central focus Godzilla. I mean,
Yeah.
2014 has a couple bugs in there, but for the most part, it's Godzilla. And then if you're wanting to see like the giant monster action,
Yeah.
honestly, pick and choose. If you see a 3-headed dragon that you think looks cool, go watch Godzilla vs. Ghidorah. If you think moths are cool,
or you Godzilla versus King Ghidorah or Ghidorah the 3-headed monster? This is very
either
different.
or really works.
I would say go with Ghidorah the 3-headed monster because Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah has one of the most broken scripts I've ever seen.
If you think bugs are cool, go watch Godzilla versus Bat. Oh wait, was it called Godzilla versus Batra? Or was it Mothra again in the 90s?
No, that was in Japan. It was called Godzilla versus Mothra. In the United States, because there was already a movie that went by that title, they called it Godzilla and Mothra: The Battle for Earth.
Yeah, go with
That sounds
go with
fancy.
that.
I would actually say go with Mothra versus Godzilla from the 60s because that is one that is held in very high regard.
Yeah. So honestly, like Nathan says, you can really, it's either depending on your taste or honestly just kind of throw a dart and go watch whatever.
If you like GVK, go watch their first their first fight because GVK was a rematch.
I still maintain they jobbed my boy Kong out to make Godzilla look strong. So that's why I prefer the original.
I love this piece of art because I saw the online. I don't remember the name of the artist, unfortunately, but it was right after GVK was announced, and it was a picture of Godzilla holding a tree at the base of a building, and then there's Kong at the top of a building, kind of like cowering down, and the caption says, "It was 60 years ago, man."
For me, my favorite piece of content that came out from GVK, especially during the lead up to it, was them dressing Kong as Mechani-Cog, and he's going, "You were never a king. You weren't even a god." And then Godzilla's like, "Mothra, you have to save Mothra."
Why did you say that, Ned?
So one question to kind of help frame it better. I understand we got Japanese-made movies and we have American-made movies. And I would assume that there's no continuity back and forth. But is there a self-contained continuity within the either set of movies? Like, is there a continuity where
for the American ones, it's called the Monsterverse. Starts off with 2014 Godzilla, then it goes Kong Skull Island, Godzilla, King of the Monsters, Godzilla vs. Kong, and then the upcoming Godzilla Cross Kong, and then there's also an Apple TV show called Monarch.
Monarch Legacy of Monsters, and even though I believe its inclusion is highly, highly dubious,
they've been messing around with the dates.
Skull Island anime on Netflix, which is the worst thing in the Monsterverse, and one of the worst things I've just ever seen. I hate that show so much. Listen to my episode about it where Rantmaster happens. Rantmaster found its way off of Power Trip into other things with good reason.
There's a reason why they haven't been showing it in the Monsterverse graphics as of late.
Because one, I think its inclusion is dubious and it's awful. Obnoxiously awful.
And then I think I was gonna say, I think for like the Japanese series, it's mostly divided between like the different eras they were coming out on.
They are, but it gets a little weird with those because you have the Showa era from 54 to 75, which is a loose continuity, but it's a continuity that is its own thing. And then you have the Heisei series from 84 to 95, which paid more attention to continuity, and tried to make each movie dovetail into the next. I don't think most of those movies have aged very well, but that's me. And, so that one has a continuity. And then you get to the Millennium series and the Millennium. But here's the other thing. The Heisei series is a direct sequel to 54, but it ignores all the other ones. And then when you get to the Millennium series, excluding the 98 film, it starts getting a little weird. Because all but one of the movies in there is its own movie that has no connections to the other ones in that series, but they all go back to 54. Which is weird. So 2000, the Millennium series from 1999 to 2004. There's 6 movies. So you have 2000, Megaguirus. I'm just going to use the abbreviation because the title's too long. GMK, Against Mechagodzilla, Tokyo SOS, and Final Wars. And other than Tokyo SOS and Against Mechagodzilla, none of them have any connections to each other.
And then Shin and Godzilla Minus One are their own
things. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking at this. I don't know if it's a reputable place, Nathan, but it's called Wikizilla.
Wikizilla. Yep, that's actually a very legitimate source. Oh, I should also mention there is the Netflix produced anime trilogy, which is also its own thing.
I don't.
That's those are very divisive entries, to say the least. I'm nicer to them than most.
Why was Mechagodzilla a giant ass city?
Because that's an interesting idea. They should have had him go like full tilt Metroplex at the end there, but that's what I would have liked. But Toho said no ho. Toho was weird about how they were letting anybody handle Godzilla at that point, and then I guess Takashi Yamazaki's like, screw you, I'm gonna do what I want. So
I do find it interesting looking at the Wikizilla article that the 54 movie is the starting point for many continuities in here, which on one hand it makes sense. On the other hand, that can get a little messy, I feel, if they don't handle it correctly. Or maybe I'm overthinking that.
I don't know, Riz.
Maybe, but it's generally not all that. It's generally not all that hard. And to be honest, a lot of times the connections are fairly minute. And you can go with them just as their own movie.
Yeah.
Really? So they stand alone pretty well. I mean, even the Showa movies, the connections, like I said, are fairly loose.
Yeah.
They're kind of their own thing, and some have more connections than others. Like Godzilla vs. Destroya has a lot of connections to the 54 film. For sure. If we're talking about 54 connections, GMK is fairly connected to 54, but not to the point where you're missing anything all that important in that movie. In fact, if someone's like, I really liked Minus One, it's like, well, then watch that one. Because Yamazaki took a lot of inspiration from GMK. And that was directed by Shusuke Kaneko, who I've had the pleasure of meeting at G-Fest.
Nice.
Who also directed the 90s Gamera trilogy.
That's awesome.
And, oh, good Lord, I could sing the praises of that trilogy. Anyway. Again, if you liked Minus One and you don't mind seeing 3 movies about a giant flying fire-breathing turtle, watch the 90s trilogy.
There's a lot here. There's a lot of movies, a lot of stuff. I'm really looking forward to trying to dive into this at some point.
Oh yeah.
Now, one thing that I meant to ask about earlier and get your take on it. So you and I have both seen Minus Color when it came out this past week. My understanding from talking to other people is that it was supposed to emulate the idea of the 1954 movie and kind of call back to that. But is there anything they did in Minus Color specifically to make it fit that, or just putting it in black and white?
Well, it wasn't just as simple as just throwing a filter on it.
Mm-hmm.
No, they actually went through and painstakingly remastered it. This is not the first time they've done this. There's a black and white version of Shin Godzilla called Shin Godzilla Ortho, which I have not seen. I don't think it's been released outside of Japan. And my understanding with that is that they just threw a filter on it. Like, considering how colorful that movie is at points, I think there would be a lot that would get lost. The advantage that Minus One has is that its color palette's already pretty muted.
Mm-hmm.
So, when they remastered it into black and white, you either really didn't lose anything or at points it enhanced it.
Yeah.
And, like I said, other than those two examples, this is the first time that we've had a full black and white Godzilla film since 1955.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow.
Because the first two Godzilla films were in black and white.
Mm-hmm.
But then there was a big gap because there wasn't another Godzilla film until 1962, and that one was a big deal because that was King Kong versus Godzilla, and it was the first time both of those monsters were in widescreen and color. So it's kind of nutty. And Godzilla was originally, a lot of people think Godzilla is green. He has only rarely been green. He's actually charcoal gray or charcoal black. And he was designed that way because those original movies were filmed in black and white.
That makes sense.
So, so yes, it was done as something of an homage, but it's also not only to the original film, but also to the era.
Yeah.
I would say here. I haven't looked into Shin Godzilla Ortho quite as much, but I know here that was the intention.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very befitting of the era because the actors, the set design, the costuming, it all fits very nicely with that.
No, when I watched it tonight, I was pretty impressed. So I had my reservations on seeing it because I don't typically watch a lot of black and white movies. I'll watch them occasionally here and there, but it's just not something I really get into a lot. So I had my hesitation just of, will I like it? Will I be as enthralled with it? And the answer for me is a resounding yes. It's still amazing. It's still a phenomenal movie. And I think, like you kind of mentioned, some things sprang off the screen more to me in the black and white than it did in the color, ironically.
Yeah. I didn't watch the video, but I saw a YouTube video that popped up in my feed where this, judging by the title and the thumbnail, the guy was saying that he doesn't think he can watch Minus One any other way but black and white now.
Interesting.
So some people have just been just blown away by it. I will say I could go either way with it. It might depend on my mood. I'm hoping both versions are included in a Blu-ray.
Same.
Yeah. So, just so you can have the option. Like, I have a 20 million miles to Earth Blu-ray where you can see, seamlessly switch between the two.
Yeah.
Like you could literally hit a button and bam, it'll go from the original black and white to color or back, which is something I would love to see that implemented for Minus One for sure. I'm just happy that it's not just a gimmick.
Yeah.
Because originally I was like, okay, that's a nice, that's a nice little homage, but it's still a little bit of a gimmick. But it worked very well, and it wasn't as simple as just throwing a filter on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some work was put into it to make it look really nice.
And that's what I kind of assumed the way the movie played out for me today was, they put in some work, but I couldn't tell if that was me being a fanboy of the movie and saying, oh yeah, they put in the work because obviously they had to, or if it was just a filter. So I want to get your take on that. So I'm glad to know that a lot of work went into that because it was really, that movie is just amazing to me. I can sing its praise all day.
And it was something that Yamazaki planned on doing pretty early on, from what I understand. He had intentions of making a black and white edition.
Wow, yeah. So I'm just amazed that I've gone this far in life without really getting into the genre more than I have. And I'm really just looking forward to sitting down at some point in the near future and watching 54 and see where my journey takes me from there.
I've got 80 plus podcast episodes for you to listen to, my friend,
I know.
including a bunch of Godzilla stuff as you start taking your little journey.
Yeah.
Make sure you watch Kong 33 too.
I will.
That is one of, like I said, that is one of the seminal movies of cinema, period.
Correct.
You need to see it because it paved the way for so many things. It's like there's countless filmmakers who were inspired by King Kong.
Yeah.
And without King Kong, we wouldn't have Godzilla.
Correct.
Which means, and without Godzilla, we wouldn't have had everything else
Mm-hmm.
that we've been enjoying ever since then. So really, it all goes back to King Kong.
Yeah. It's amazing how one little monkey can make all the difference in the world.
For sure, except he's an ape. But
I mean,
you know, whatever on that. I will say, here's the thing though about the Kong movies, because that was my first season of the podcast. The original King Kong is so freaking close to perfect that when you watch any of the rest of them, you're just like, oh. Some are farther from that perfection than others, but
Yeah.
yeah. Looking at you, King Kong lives.
You know, it's fascinating that King Kong was made in America,
Mm-hmm.
and then the next iteration, from my understanding, or one of the next iterations came out in Japan when it was Godzilla vs. King Kong. I think that's pretty
Yep,
interesting.
that was the third King Kong film. What's the other thing? So it's both monsters are in color and widescreen. It was both their third film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it looks like they had Son of Kong come out in the middle.
Yeah, it came out 6 months after the original.
Mm-hmm.
That's a quick turnaround.
Well, it was a cash grab. They're like,
Mhm.
well, this movie made all kinds of money. Throw a sequel together.
Yep.
Well, people are it's still popular. Put a sequel together. Like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So then they went 30-something years without another movie?
No.
Not from a lack of trying.
No. So then we had the 76 remake of King Kong.
Oh, good lord. Well, no. There was another Japanese film.
Oh, that's right. There was the
King Kong Escapes, where we get Mechanicon.
Yeah, I was gonna say
And a mad scientist, Doctor Who, dubbed by Paul Frees.
Oh my goodness, the backstory between that Japanese King Kong is insane.
It's absolutely, yeah, it is insane.
Oh,
I won't get into it now. But then, yeah, the 76 remake, which is, I mean, it's not terrible, but it's gross and in a way that only the 70s could have done.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, I only watched that one.
Jeff Bridges is in it, and who's the actress in it? Because it was her debut movie. Can't remember her name now. She was a big time actress.
Let me pull it up real quick.
Oh, as soon as you say her name, I'm gonna be like, yeah,
Jessica Lange.
Jessica Lange. Yeah, that was her first movie.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, and then that got a sequel. A sequel where they decided to, which has Linda Hamilton in it, which is kind of interesting, but she's not she's not the lady that Kong wants. No, they introduce a female Kong who's in desperate need of a bra.
King Kong lives.
King Kong lives, and also the movie also establishes that artificial hearts cure falling off a building. Because that's all he needed. Kong was like almost dead for 10 years, and they're like, all we got to do is put an artificial heart in him. And I'm like, he fell off a freaking building.
And a heart fixes that somehow?
And an artificial heart fixes that.
And then we get
Okay, and then there was a baby at the end, because of course there's a baby at the end.
And then we get Peter Jackson's King Kong.
Yeah, and then you get Peter Jackson's King Kong, which is actually really good. It's kind of popular to hate on it. I can't hate on it. Maybe it is a little overlong, but it's like having too much candy.
I think that, yeah.
You know?
What the?
Yeah. And the ending almost makes me cry.
Oh, God. 05 Kong is great.
Yeah,
but
I like 05 Kong, and then you had Skull Island.
But yeah, those are topics for another podcast, which
Yeah.
I was gonna say, why are we doing this?
which you could actually go listen to Nathan's podcast about it, because you said the first season is all about Kong, right?
The first season's all about Kong. Second season's all about Gamera.
There you go.
And in the midst all there, I talk about some other movies. I talk about some Toho classics. I started going chronologically through all the Godzilla films because I did that in my previous podcast life, and then decided, you know what? Screw that old show. I'll just do it again.
I feel that completely. We kind of did that with this one. We had a podcast. I scrapped it. We're doing it right now, little by little.
Yeah.
So I think we're all in agreement that this movie's fantastic, and a little ironic that it's competing with Gareth Edwards, the creator, for Best Visual Effects at the upcoming Academy Awards.
I didn't make that connection, but you're quite right there. That is really interesting. I should have gone to see the creator. I meant to, but I just didn't get to.
The story is mid. Visual effects are amazing.
I didn't like the movie.
It's what I kind of thought it would be, but
yeah, I watched the creator at my uncle's house a couple of weeks ago, and I was not that impressed with it.
Yeah, visually looks great, but when you look past that and you get to like where there's supposed to be meat, there's not. But yeah, no. So it's gonna be an interesting two-way race, and yeah, Riz, you want to wrap this up?
Yeah, I was about to do that. So. Yeah. Nathan, first, I just want to say thanks for joining us on Toku Secrets. I hope this is the first of many times that we can kidnap you into this universe.
Kidnap me.
But
sorry, someone just tried to Facebook call me, so thankfully that noise didn't get picked up.
But Nathan, before we go, I would like you to do your quick plugs of where can people find you outside of, the couple of things we've already talked about. What are some things that you want to plug out there?
And what are some upcoming stuff you got going on too?
Yeah.
Well, you guys got to remember, you got to listen to the Film Vault a little more often. I have a term for this. Shameless self-promotion. So it's a thing on the Film Vault. So yes, obviously I'm a podcaster. I talk about a lot of tokusatsu and kaiju. Most prominently is the Monster Island Film Vault, a podcast about a podcast seeking entertainment and enlightenment through tokusatsu. I almost conflated my taglines. I'm sorry, I have too many shows. But yeah, so if you enjoy hearing the kind of stuff that I've been going over, you get even more of it on the Film Vault. It's all about film appreciation and bridging the gap between the original, either old-timey or foreign, usually both, audiences and the modern, and enhancing one's appreciation for it. I do research on things related to the films to help put them into proper perspective. To give an example, since we talked about 05 Kong, because Andero in that performs in vaudeville, I researched vaudeville. Which is actually really interesting, and once you know stuff about vaudeville, it actually makes Anne's story in the movie a little more interesting. And then also, because I'm nuts, you didn't get kayfabe, Nate, tonight, because usually when I go on shows about kaiju stuff, I'm in kayfabe because I basically have a fictionalized persona of myself on there. And originally it was just supposed to be a gimmick for reference jokes. It has quickly turned into a full-fledged audio drama with multiple characters. Most of which came about because I have amazing listeners. So, if you want to check out some of that and, try to not lose the plot while you're listening to that, go for it. And then I'm also the co-host of Henshin Men, which is about the Henshin hero television for the most part. Mostly it was focused on the original Kamen Rider. It's branched out and talked about a few other things here and there. I'm hoping to wrap that up pretty soon here for reasons that I'll get into shortly. And obviously what Riz knows me from is the Power Trip, a journey through the Power Rangers franchise, which I co-host with the one, the only Michael Hamilton, where we went through the entire Power Rangers franchise in about a year, dedicating one episode to each season of the show unpacked all of it. Henshin Men is typically a sprint. Power Trip is a marathon. Strap in for a 3-hour minimum.
Yeah.
On average.
You've had some 4 or 5 hours too.
Oh, we had one that went 5. Because for the second season, while we were waiting for 30th anniversary material to come out for Power Rangers, we talked about some Power Ranger comics, which were typically shorter episodes, and Super Sentai, which is where the 5 episode came in, because we had a lot to say about Ranger. I had a lot to say about Ranger. Ranger at the moment is still, I would say, my favorite Sentai that I've seen so far.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty high. It's pretty high up there. You would think it would be Kaku Ranger for other reasons, but although I did like Kaku Ranger a lot, but
is it because of Ninja Man?
So what?
Because of Ninja Man or something else?
Something else. My character on the audio drama, which I should bring that up. Actually, I am also. This is again how Riz knows me, and thank you by the way, for your wonderful reviews of the first 2 seasons of Power Rangers, the audio drama from Scyther Audio, made by the impeccable Karl Dutton. So I'm part of Scyther's stable of actors on there. I've most notably I have played Rito on there, and I've also been in the X-Men audio drama. I've only appeared in 1 episode. I was a post-credit gag as, of all people, Deadpool. I was personally asked to do it. Never in my life would I have believed you if you said, "Oh, you get to play Deadpool." I'm like, really? Deadpool?
And now we need a Rito and Deadpool buddy cop drama.
I have an entire scene of them meeting in my head that at some point I may have to write and record. And what I still need to figure out is whether or not they would end up best friends or worst enemies. I'm not sure at this point. because my as you guys talked about in your season 2, and you get even more of it in season 3, my Rito he's a snarky bonehead, but he's also kind of a sociopath. I liked how Riz put it. He actually said, "You Rito better than the original Rito." I'm like, I don't know how to feel about that, but okay. Because I have tremendous respect for the original voice actor. He's no longer with us. He also went on to voice Deviat, and I love Deviat. So, so I try not to besmirch him. I wish I could have met the man. Unfortunately, I've heard the other actors on the show talk about how they went to conventions and met the original actors who played their characters. I'm like, I can't do that. I am the only Rito. I am the only Rito. And I just got cast in the Avengers spinoff from the X-Men show. It's one of Karl's friends. His name is Mitch. Can't remember his last name, unfortunately, but he's working on it. I wanted to audition as Steve Rogers because I love Steve Rogers, one of my favorite superheroes. Didn't work out, but I got the next best thing. I'm Johnny Stark, baby. Because the Fantastic Four will be guesting on an episode because the Avengers have to fight Doctor Doom. So, like I said, it's the other Chris Evans character. So, I'm having tremendous fun with all of those. You could also, I'm a writer as well, published novelist, frequent freelancer. You can find me on, in a lot of different publications, most notably Kaiju United. I just got my first article published by them. And you can also check out my author website. We can find links to all of my stuff on nathanjsmarchand.com. Yes, I had to use both my middle initials because somebody already took the domain nathanmarchand.com. I'm going to find that guy.
And
Gotta find that guy.
and we'll have links
make
to all
demands.
those down in the description below on
Yeah,
YouTube and whatnot.
I'll send you my link. I have link trees for both.
Thank you.
Both of these.
That's great.
Yeah, because the Film Vault is on like all the social media networks. The Film Vault has a website as well. I just launched a Discord server actually for the Film Vault called the Marketlight Lounge. So if anybody here would like to, double dip from Anime Secrets, and come join us in the Marketlight Lounge. We, and you want to talk about any of my 3 main podcasts, you're more than welcome. Anyway,
for sure. Well, it was definitely a blast having you on today. Always a blast to be able to talk kaiju stuff, because when it hits, and Godzilla Minus One hit really, really good. Riz, go ahead and take us out, man.
Yeah, so thanks again, Nathan, for joining us, and Miguel for getting coffee at the wrong place at the right time.
Yeah.
So we are Toku Secrets. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and a various assortment of other podcast hosting places. And we thank you for listening to our podcast. Stay safe. We all love you, and may the power protect you.
Adios.
Indeed. Well, actually, before we sign out, guys, just really quick, against my better judgment, I got a little treat for you. It's not from me though. It's from my roommate.
Oh my!
He turned into a skeleton.
Who are you calling a skeleton?
You?
Whoa! Wait, Rito Repulse is on our podcast now.
I'm Rito Bandor or Rito Revolto, depending on who you talk to. It's about time Nate got out of the way and let the real talent run things around here.
So, Rito, what did you think of Godzilla?
Godzilla? Why are we talking about Godzilla?
I mean, didn't your sister make the monster grow?
Yeah, my sister makes all kinds of things grow. She has some really weird fans, let me tell you.
Oh,
we are a PG
tell.
podcast, Mr. Rito. Just remember that.
Well, boner. Nate didn't tell me about that. Why am I the only person whose name you get right? Shut up, Martian. All right. I'm only here because I heard Riz say lots of nice things about the audio drama on your episode, and apparently he loves me.
Oh, we do. You are a fan favorite of me and a couple of my friends on the podcast. You, my sir, crack us up, and you're just amazing.
Well, I'm glad somebody around here appreciates my genius.
Guess you can say they have a real... I can't say that.
I mean, you could.
No. PG.
Oh, come on. I know you want to.
Go for it.
Nope, not today.
Okay.
Not today. Not today, he says. Where's that rant master button? I got opinions about this. Get out of here. Stop. That's enough. Okay, I'm sorry about that, guys, but he insisted.
I mean, hey, I will always take a visit from Rito Bandora on our podcast. He is welcome anytime he wants to.
That's dangerous. That's dangerous, my friend. I'm glad he didn't hear that because he has a habit of crashing podcasts.
Maybe we'll invite him to Cockerains and we review that season.
Yeah,
oh, good Lord.
At least
he said, here's the problem. He hates Junior.
Then it'll be
they don't get along. Junior hates him because he's like, I'm sick of being confused for this imposter.
All right. Well, thanks again. It was great to have Rito guest appear at the last second. We definitely appreciated that.
For sure.
But once again, we are Toku Secrets. Nathan, Rito, Miguel, thanks for being here. Hopefully I'll find my way back to the rest of the Toku Secrets cast and we can continue doing our Timeranger review series where we're going to be.
Oh man, that's a Sentai I wish we had gotten to on Power Trip.
We just wrapped up the final episode of Timeranger. We are about to do our Time Force review next time. And
I love Time Force.
Following that, we are doing a Timeranger versus Time Force Mass Up, where we discuss who did it better. And boy, do we have some opinions on that.
Oh yeah, actually, I'll let you guys know since we're talking about upcoming projects. Henshin Men and Power Trip are basically over at this point. Each one's going to have maybe a couple more episodes apiece, depending on how things go. However, they're going to continue in a slightly different form. Basically, they're going to combine Zord style into a new podcast that I'm hoping to launch later this year.
Ooh.
And I think this is the first time I've mentioned the new title that I'm working with now for it, which will be Henshin Power V3.
Okay.
Ooh, I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Will it have
so don't anybody steal that title between now and then. I will sue you. or sick Rito on.
Yeah, Rito might have something to say about that. But after we finish the Time Force battle, we're going to move on to Ginga Man and its Power Rangers counterpart, Lost Galaxy.
Yep.
To continue our our journey through Sentai to figure out which director did it best. So you have a lot of stuff to look forward to. We also have some upcoming possible interviews with some guests from the franchise. So definitely stay tuned as we iron out those details. But once again, thank you. We love you, and may the power protect y'all.